ahead and introduce yourselves. Who are you? Where can we find you? What do you do? Things like that.
Oh, this is
You go ahead and
always
go
a
first,
hard
Lottie.
question. Oh God, why do you put this on me? Lexi knows I'm like half awake and knows. Okay. Oh, I'm so bad at this. Hi, I'm Lottie Blix. What the fuck do I do? I'm on Twitch. And oh, am I loud? Here, let me not be as loud. Sorry. I talk about leftist politics and theory, sometimes sort of practical application of theory. I'm also a paleoanthropologist, so we talk about science, and I'm also a history major as well. So we talk about some history, primarily medieval to early modern European history. It's good times. And you can find me at twitch.tv/LottieBlix. Did I do okay?
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Bonus question, are you Bad Bunny? Also, I am Bad Bunny.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found out
How
about
are you
this
two people
recently.
at once? That's not fair. I'm only allowed to be one person. Hold on.
I mean, this is what I've been told. We've never been seen in the same room, so.
Oh, shit.
Anyway. It's a conspiracy.
I respect it. I respect the conspiracy.
My chat says everybody get your $5 out.
Oh my God. Any pay pigs in chat? Okay, we're not going there. It's too early. It's too early. It's too early.
I'm out.
Like, bye.
I'm leaving.
Hang up.
Y'all are just educating my chat today, okay?
My gosh.
Your poor innocent chat is going to be corrupted by us crusty anarchists. Like, Lottie, what's a pay pig?
Oh no. No.
Jesus.
We're not gonna go there.
Oh gosh. Well, hi, I'm cyberwitchlexi. I like to talk about a lot of things. We talk about gender way more than I want to. Oh my God. Being trans on this site. But we
it's fun.
I don't know.
It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the word. We can call it that. We talk about a lot of leftist stuff, a lot of leftist theory. I'm really interested in how do I say this? In not making the same mistakes that we've already made, and trying to make sure that we peel back. I'll call it the artifice of basically a lot of society in general, but just a lot of the things that we do, a lot of the ways that we engage with each other, pull back the artifice just to kind of see how it works, so that we don't make those mistakes again in the future. That's what I'm super interested in. Which makes it sound super abstract and vague and not very engaging.
No.
I think that sounds way more interesting than I vaguely talk about stuff. I like that. I like that description. I think it's good.
No, I heavily agree. I'm there on that as well. Okay, we are so close, team. I'm so proud of myself right now. I
believe in you.
Do you?
I really do.
I really need that in my life right now.
Need that energy.
Thank you. I just need Lottie's energy in here. Believing
Take my energy.
Thank you, Lottie.
I currently also have gauze in my mouth, so if I'm talking funny, please forgive me.
Oh, that's rough.
My braces have like a wire in the back, and they're just like stabbing into my cheeks, into my face, and it's very swollen and hurty. So good times.
Ouch.
Yeah, I actually wanted to go into next. How are you both doing? Because while this is a time to educate and talk about different issues, I also think that a good thing to do is just occasionally check in on everyone. How are you doing? I don't get to DM you enough. Are you okay? Like
that is a question. Holy. Have I ever been okay? I don't know.
That's fair.
No, I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here, although quickly remembering why no one ever invites me to come on their podcast.
Wait, no, don't say that.
I just immediately derail. I'm like, so who wants to talk about the thing that's completely off topic and bad? No, but I'm super happy to be here and yeah, happy to.
I think I got it figured out, chat. Look at us go. Oh my gosh, we have so many cuties on one screen. Poggies. Okay, we did it. We did it, chat. We won. I'm so proud of myself. That's it. We're done. Stream's over. I succeeded. All right. So I know at least one of you is a crusty anarchist. Are you both considered just you crusty anarchists? How are we muted? Wait, you talk. How did this happen? What the fuck? How did this happen? This is some bullshit. That's it. I'm done. I quit. Okay, we're gonna... What the fuck? Yeah, they were hearing you earlier, right? All right, give me a minute. Just...
Is the eternal streamer struggle. Oh yeah, because everyone said I was loud. Did you right click and try to turn down my volume by chance? Like right click on?
No, I didn't touch shit. Okay.
I didn't do it. Oh, we good?
I didn't do it. Okay,
Sounds like
so
we're good.
I think it's because this has this here. There's a way I need to add this because this fixed. This is okay. Lottie is cute, so we have to figure this out. Listen. Lottie got cute just for us today.
I dragged my sad, sleepy ass out of bed, and I got cute. Hey, DJ Indian, how's it going?
Okay, I think I know how to figure this out.
We have Canadian royalty here. We got DJ Indian from a tribe called...
Silencing Lottie. I'm so sorry. All right, try that.
Hello?
Boom! I got it! Did I do
muted?
it?
Shut up.
Oh, wait. It works! Fuck yeah! Okay, this is it. This is praxis. This is how we're gonna make it through the revolution. I don't know.
Getting your audio working.
We got it to work. This is praxis. We got Lottie.
We did a
Lexi
communism
on screen, and we can hear you. Okay, all right. I'm good. I'm satisfied with this.
I said that we have Canadian royalty in the house here. DJ Indian, from a tribe called Red, and my newest dear pal, who's a super cool human being, is in the chat. Nice to see you, pal.
Incredible.
That I highly recommend inviting Ian, DJ Indian, to do a stream with you sometime and talk about Indigenous issues and language, especially because he's currently learning. Okay, let me see if I. No, I'm gonna butcher it. It's too early and I have gauze in my mouth. I was gonna try to say the name of the language, but I'm gonna screw it up. So.
I believe in you. If you screw it up, it's that much better, Lottie. It's fine.
It counts because you're trying.
I
think it's an Anishinaabe Moen. Is that correct? I'm probably butchering it, but
if you butchered it, you did better than I would have. So an Anashin, say it again.
Oh God, I feel bad.
Anishinaabe
Moen.
Moen. Is that?
I highly recommend. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly, but yeah, you should.
That's incredible.
He's super interesting to talk to, and like has the most. Did I say it right? Yay!
See,
I'm learning.
Believe in yourself.
We had a couple incredible conversations where, like, not to like toot my own horn, but like at this point in my life, with like so many years of like academia and crap, and a lot of white settler book learning that I've done, I feel like my mind isn't blown very often. And then, like I talk to, people from other cultures that are, like immersed in their culture, that are so far removed from, white Western settler culture. And my, like Ian told me stuff that just blew my mind. Like the synapses were firing, and it's so important because I feel like I kind of had like stunted in my learning, and I'm actually really excited to like learn more from non-white people now that I've read all the dead old white guys.
Yeah. Does is it DJ Indian?
DJ Indian, yeah.
Indian. Oh, do they stream?
Maybe. I saw that we're trying to get him. I'm sorry that I've been MIA, but yeah, we're gonna harass him to do some streaming.
Yeah, we definitely need more people of color on the platform. I'm always like, oh, is this someone I can boost the heck out of? Pog,
fuck yeah.
Awesome. You do. Okay, that's it. Let's get a shout
there
out.
You go.
Let's get a shout out. I'm sorry. We got to take a minute so I can go follow, because if I don't follow now, I'm going to forget. And I'm just not about it. I got to go do it now.
I fully can relate to that.
Oh, where's the follow button? I think here, I can fix this. There we go. They need to put that there instead of the freaking add friend. That is so annoying.
I know, I hate that. Yo, Patch, thanks for gifting a sub to DJ Indian also.
I don't think I've ever really wanted to add someone as a friend on Twitch.
Yeah.
Whenever people add me, I'm like, what is the purpose of this?
The only reason is I have Whisper shut off for people who are not my friends. So that's the only reason to add me as a friend. But I'm like, listen, I'm more like, I gotta follow you so I can raid you. We're not friends until I raid you, okay? That's not a good idea because I can't raid some people because like times are off, but still. All right. So.
Not like me. We're not friends unless money. I'm Bad Bunny.
Is that the Bad Bunny? Oh God.
It's a Bad Bunny joke. Yeah. More Bad Bunny meme.
Gotta do it. Gotcha. Mm-hmm. All right. So going back, both of you identify with anarchism, right? Do you both identify with communism in some level or no?
I do. I would say that I see that some form of like end goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I agree. I mean, the argument usually is that, especially when we're talking, when anarchists and communists are just talking, the end goal is absolutely the same as communism. It's just the methodology and steps to get there. We have some disagreements on sometimes.
Gotcha. Yeah. Would you say they are different though, right? Because some communism this is my question. Some communists are more authoritarian than anarchists. So is that what kind of differentiates it, you feel?
Well, okay, so let's be like, there are like a lot of different kinds of anarchism. Mm-hmm. That mean like a lot of different things. And they one of the biggest things, so I think that a lot of it has to do, for me, the way that I understand it, I view a lot of it as a lens to view the world. That's the way that I look at my anarchism. It's like my lens. Same. I don't care as much about like some sort of like, okay, we need to, turn off the state tomorrow and then we're going to be okay. Like, that's not how this functions at all. But that I think that always attempting to be critical of these hierarchies is like the biggest connecting piece, but that I there's a lot of different kinds of anarchism that I think would probably be less useful, wouldn't lead to like the whatever kind of goodness that we're attempting to go for. I don't know. It really would depend on like a lot of stuff, a lot of the ways that you're setting up, the way that Gosh, I'm trying to not get like too deep into like ideology memes, but
Give me
like,
the names.
ideology.
I'll just ask 20 questions. It's fine.
well, okay, so sort of what I'm getting at is like I see a lot of the issues of like modern day society as the fact that neoliberal society has abstracted us from each other. That like why I've said this before recently on stream, like why on like stream or on stream, sorry, why like if you're like driving down the road and you see someone whose like car is broken out, why don't more people stop? Like why don't more people go and like attempt to help? What's stopping? Because it seems like when someone's in like a shitty situation, most of us, we have like an empathetic response. Like this tends to be like a pretty common thing for most people. They have an empathetic response when they see someone that's like struggling. So like, I'm always curious, like why? It seems like a lot of it, through like a lot of anarchist texts, they seem to relate this back to the idea of a state. At this point, we're going to call it neoliberal society, but a state that is abstracted the need to I'll call it a need, the need to help each other through like taxes, essentially. Like why would I have to, take my time off from my day to help them? They can, call like a, some hotline or whatever. They can call something. They've, they pay their taxes. Someone will, a cop will pick them up or whatever and take them where they need to go. They'll be fine. Someone else can handle that. I've done my part by, paying my taxes. And so for me, I think a lot of our, I want to break down some of that abstraction between each other. And sometimes I feel like some, we'll call them authcoms, authoritarian communists, however we want, I don't know, it's a lot of different groups. I would say some of these, I feel like we fall into the same trap, that just expanding like the public sector of government or whatever doesn't actually break down the way that we view each other and those systems.
May I?
I'm sorry, that was really a lot.
Oh, no, that's okay. No, that was really good.
That was helpful. That was really helpful.
May I expand upon that? And not to put words in your mouth,
Please.
But one thing that I find that is common, and I have some anarchist friends that'll make fun of me for this, but it's just the framing of it, that we talk a lot about, and I feel like this is a fundamental difference between, a lot of anarchists and a lot of, like, as you said, like authoritarian communists or people who want to, put aside any kind of sectarian issues or identity issues or whatever, and do the revolution now, right? One of the biggest issues is that we, looking at things from a material perspective, I think anarchists realize that we need to have a shift of consciousness as well. Not to put it in like super hippie terms, but like, like that's kind of like, I don't know if it's an agree laugh or like a disagree laugh, but it's so hard to, it's hard to phrase it without sounding a bit hippie-ish, because like you said, Lexi, like that we do have a fundamental, sort of sympathy or empathy or compassion towards other human beings. That is really at the core of leftist, any kind of leftist theory, is that we recognize that inequality exists and that we, think that it's bad and we want to eradicate it. And people will call this really, idealistic and not materialist. But from my perspective in that, and I think I can speak for a lot of other anarchists that I know, we don't see like a sort of like vanguard-led like revolution working out very well if other people are not on board. You know what I mean? Any kind of coercive sort of system to getting to a revolution or to creating a new system is just going to continue to perpetuate that unless we change how we fundamentally interact with each other and how we relate to each other and the world around us, which sounds extremely idealistic, but I think that part of it is direct action super important. I think decolonizing, talking to Indigenous people, talking to people in the global South, who are basically the tools and resource extraction points for Western capitalism, imperialism, and trying to prefigure the society that we want to see in whatever microcosms possible. Because people, I think, when they see a good thing, tend to want to, move towards that when they see it actually happening in practice. So hopefully that makes sense.
Something in the readings that I hear a lot, or I see a lot, and then I just heard you say materialism. Materialism, I don't know if that's like as compared to idealism, but when you say materialism, I often think of money and who owns things. Is that what it is, or what is the material conditions that we're talking about?
Well, materialism, like you said, a lot of people interpret that as like materialism as in like Madonna, material girl, like I like stuff, versus the at least in my studies, the sociological and philosophical and anthropological perspective, which is that the conditions around us basically create they contribute in a sort of I think a way to probably make this make sense is like in an intersectional way to the way that our lives end up looking, how they express themselves. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think I'm catching what you're saying. But basically, like, how I grew up is dramatically different from perhaps an inner city Black kid, right? In the material conditions of that. So the education, would that play into it? Like the quality of education they get just because of the money they have and the place they live. Those are the material conditions we're speaking of. Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. I was taking it as, I think, a little too basic, but there's a lot that plays into that. Yeah,
it's mostly trying to be a counter to the idea that like history is driven by like ideals or something. It's usually saying that like history tends to be driven by what we refer to as material conditions.
And that's almost like by having people in better material conditions, they just do better. They have better education, they have better outcomes, they are able, like, we go into the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Where go ahead.
Well, I just want to I think that like historic materialism is trying to be more about pointing towards the relationship between various classes and how the antagonism and friction between them leads to a changing future.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So basically, like, with history, we had the downfall of the monarchs, right? And then we moved into more of the proletariat and the bourgeoisie.
Actually,
right, because under the monarchy, there was still like an upper echelon who who truly believed, and we still see this today, who truly believed that they earned what they have, that they've like deserved it. And so we have to see a lot of these things as a friction between each other, that like just because we came up with like some ideal, like my stream recently talked about the problem with human rights. I know that sounds edgy, but
I get what you're saying.
But that like that this is constantly like a battle, that there is like some upper class, some class in power, and then a large, generally we usually at this point we call this the proletariat or the workers or whatever. But that like every like as we move forward, it's very rare that we like came to some like ideal or whatever and we're like, oh, there it is, we have to go, let's go do that, and then we do it. It's more like a constant fight all the time, back and forth, where the workers have to say, no, fuck you, I get what I want, I deserve to like not die when I go to work. And everyone else says, but then I don't make as much money, and you go, well, no, I will stop you. And so this is like how society what historical materialism generally says society is like doing to move forward, that we haven't like reached some like pinnacle of ideas and now we're just doing the best things, that instead that we are in a constant fight that we can't get out of, and we have to keep fighting.
Okay, yeah. And that brings, like, activism becomes the most important thing. I remember reading, and have you both, I assume, read the Communist Manifesto?
Most of it's been a little bit, but yeah, I think I read
long
it
time
all.
ago.
Okay, so in the third, I'm over here like I read my one piece of material and I'm relating this back to my one piece of theory.
That's good.
But that reminds me of an interesting point, and I believe it's the third chapter talking about the areas of almost ways communism has advanced. Did we get Lance?
The three L's.
Lotties! Welcome
Wait,
in.
We're missing lucid, and then we would have 4 L's.
Oh my
4
gosh.
L's?
Yeah, what the
The
heck?
big L.
Oh, I thought you said elves. I was like, oh.
No, no. Oh.
I mean,
we got-
yeah,
we
It's
whatever.
like, I've never been called an elf, but thank you.
Well, I was kind of low-key cursing myself because I might change my name over to Lumi, and then we would have had Lottie, Lexi, and Lumi.
I love
That'd be so good.
Yeah, join the elves, please.
I'm like, oh my gosh. Welcome in,
so
Lance.
cute.
Would you mind telling everyone who are you? This
Hi,
strange
my name
man
is
showed
Lance.
up.
I go by he, him pronouns. I am a lefty political streamer on the Twitch, and you can find me at twitch.tv/theserfstv.
Thank you for joining us. I appreciate that. So we did introduce a little bit, just talking about like, are we anarchists, communists? How do those relate to us? Where are you standing? What do you associate with?
Also,
Oh
wait,
my.
Lance, can you be any louder? I apologize. I'm sorry.
Oh,
You're
you
really
might-
quiet
oh,
on my
sorry.
end.
Yeah,
I turned
Eva,
you up.
You might have to turn me up on your end.
I have you up as loud as I can go. It's okay.
Yeah,
Hold on.
same.
I'll just balance one out. Don't worry.
Oh,
Don't worry. I'll rebalance.
How about this? Is this better?
Ooh, yeah.
Ooh.
I'll give
Nice.
you ASMR answers. I'll try my best.
There we go.
We've got the Lance ASMR today. Nice.
Yeah, I'm probably the least radical person on this panel, and I mean radical as in like tubular, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles style.
You're
Yeah,
crusty
so I'm-
by association.
Yeah, so I'm a socialist, and that's a bit of an umbrella term. It means a lot of different things, but my sales pitch right now, and what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to bring more people like Dem Socks and even liberals to the left, is I'm saying to everyone, do you love freedom? And I don't know if everyone here loves freedom.
I love
freedom.
Isn't freedom
depending
great?
on what you mean by that, right?
Smart answer.
Freedom
There you
is free.
So what I suggest is that you have the freedom, say in a democracy, to not be ruled by a fascist or a tyrant, right? And we all have the ability to vote for our leaders. That's freedom. I love that. So I want to extend that to the place where you spend the most amount of time in your day. Most people have a job. They work 8 hours a day, probably in a job they don't like. Why don't you have freedom in the workplace? Why don't you have the ability to make decisions that affect you directly every single day? I want to extend freedom to your job. So I want to remove the current structure that we have, which is employer, employee. And we've had a lot of different structures throughout history, right? We used to have slaves and masters. We used to have lords and serfs under feudalism. And now we have employer, employee. That's our current power structure. So I want to extend that kind of freedom so that we no longer have employees and employees. We have worker cooperatives in which everyone who works there is able to make decisions that directly affect them.
Awesome. Thank you, Lance. And I really appreciate that. That actually goes back into something I wanted to get into a little regarding terms. I feel like I made a really rookie mistake recently. Melina, Destiny's partner, had swung by my stream, and then I swung by hers, and people were like, "Are you a commie?" And I was like, "I think I'm an anarchist." And everyone was like, "You're a fucking what?" And they're probably thinking like, Eva wants the purge, and I'm like, "Oh no!"
Oh my god.
and so I'm like trying to explain it, and everyone is just like, it was rough. I was like, I should have not done this.
It's really sad because that word has been tarnished, right? Like ultimately,
Yes.
what it actually means is that you don't believe there should be any unjust hierarchies, and I
Yeah.
agree with that. Like that sounds lovely, right? I'm all for that, you know. But that's the problem. If you use that kind of term, the colloquialism, if people are going to be like, "Oh, so you want to burn down and you want to have the purge? You want to have
Can't
the purge?
believe
What's
you
in your
want to
basically?"
firebomb Starbucks. What the fuck?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, who doesn't like a little smashy smash now and then?
Of course, Lottie.
This is why my partner application got rejected. I need to shut up.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh, I love
Don't
this
break
panel.
things, people. Breaking things is bad. Vandalism is violence. Don't do it.
But that's how you're identifying, Eva?
So I think that I fall under anarchist ideas and I want to learn more. That's my whole goal for having this panel, is learning more. And then also just having a conversation, which with that story, I want to open up with, what do you do with your terms? I feel like I don't know the difference between socialism and communism, for example. So that's a question I have. And I want to know, you might identify these ways. Are there different times that you choose not to say you're a communist? Because, I don't know, I feel like in Indiana, if I say I'm a communist, I'm going to get that same response as I just did, because I have people around me who have that red scare, that intense fear of communism. And then if I say anarchy, everyone's just like, of course, you little fucking silver-haired punk that doesn't even know your own gender. You know, like that's how I feel like people react to me.
It's too real.
So how do you, like, the terms that you identify with, why do you identify with them? And when do you actually use that term? Or do you use it all the time? Or do you just use it on your stream to educate? How do you navigate that?
Lexi, have you defined all the terms already? I know you're
Well, okay, so we didn't do like a socialism versus communism. We were going through a little bit of our anarchism, how we usually see it as like an trying to get rid of unjust hierarchies, but we didn't get as much into like the communism versus socialism separation. The way that this is like usually generally, at least the way I'll be like the way that I generally hear it used usually means something along the lines of socialism is like your stepping stone to communism. That communism would be a classless, stateless, moneyless society in which the proletariat has revolutioned against the capitalist class and redistributed everything that they have to the point where we don't have any sort of the similar structures that we have today. And the way that we engage in society is so radically different that we have completely decoupled ourselves from like commodity fetishism and all this. It's a lot of fucking theory, Das Kapital and all that good jazz. But basically gets to like that we're at a society where these class distinctions don't exist anymore. Whereas socialism, some of these class distinctions will still exist, and we're trying to get rid of them. Socialism, some people say, is the workers owning the means of production. Some people disagree with that definition. These are confusing terms. But I would say, for your other question, that usually I only call myself an anarchist in like lefty spaces. If I feel, if I don't care what someone thinks about me, I'm okay saying it. But usually what I like to do, I don't usually like say like terms. I think this is a really interesting thing that I talk about this a lot on my stream, how I think a lot of people have what I consider, I call it, I'm a little facetious. I call it like the SJW meter, that like in their brain, they have like a thing that like, if you flip this switch, if you do enough things to flip this switch, they'll stop listening to you, that they don't care anymore. That like you are like you've been labeled like an SJW and you don't matter and you're just a crazy triggered whatever. So they can't listen to you anymore. So instead, what we have to do is develop rhetorical strategies that get around these walls that they want to put up. Those walls they put up are very I don't like them. So usually I like to, like, if I'm like in a workplace or something, I like to talk about how bullshit it is that we have to do all this work and the people at the top don't do anything like this kind of work and make significantly more than us. Man, doesn't that suck? Like, I like to do like little prods at like, wow, it's kind of messed up the way this thing is set up, right?
Little workplace agitation.
Yeah, exactly.
Without dropping the dreaded "you" word.
Yeah, you don't have to you bring up terms like communism or socialism. I think one of the best things that Bernie Sanders did was make socialism not a scary word. I think that's like one of like the best, and even then, like, it's still like an uphill battle. Like, there's still tons of people who think that it is a scary word and that this is.
You've described the difference between democratic socialism and socialism too.
Well, we didn't describe that particular one. If you wanna hop on that, I know I've been talking for like 3 hours now.
No, those are all great. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So yeah, democratic socialism operates within the capitalist system, right? So that's why I think they get a bad rap, and I don't like it. I think democratic socialists are allies. Their hearts are in the right place, right? They want to have a very strong safety net so that people who don't have the same economic advantages or might not be born into the right class that you are still don't have to suffer. So housing for all, Medicare for all, programs like that, right? Redistributing the wealth within the society. So like I personally, I don't like the fact that they're constantly labeled like I've heard people say that like, well, Bernie Sanders is like a bourgeois capitalist and all this kind of stuff, and I was like, he's pushing things so far to the left in America. Like you have to be excited about this. Like I mean,
there's like like 100 years of making capitalism a scary word. 100 plus, well, actually, yeah, like 100 years of like, really like a campaign to make to make communism or socialism a really scary term. And to the point where, people even still, I'm sure you've encountered this, Lance, where like Americans are like, oh, how long do you have to wait to see a doctor in Canada? Like, and I'm hearing people are telling me stories about like people they know like dying in waiting rooms because they can't afford, they have to go to like a free clinic that there's like everyone's trying to get into. Meanwhile, we're like, our healthcare system isn't perfect, but for a lot of reasons, but because it's considered socialized medicine. Like when I was in my early 20s, traveling in the US, like that was the one thing that came up often, because this was probably this would have been like right after Obama was elected, so there was a lot of fear mongering about socialized medicine. And I remember watching C-SPAN, just having it on the background one day when I was getting ready, when I lived in Los Angeles, and there was this woman on TV that was like, you should fear this healthcare bill more than any terrorist threat out there. And it was such like intense fear mongering because it's absurd, right? So yeah, I will say that in terms of like mainstreaming something that has had such a like an intense campaign of disinformation and like slandering against it for like 100 years, Bernie's done a good job. But
yeah, I totally understand. I mean, none of us, I assume, are old enough to remember like the Red Scare or basically like
I do.
What are you saying, Lance? What do you mean we're not old enough? What are you trying?
Are you gonna tell me I'm not 73 years old? Hold on.
trying to pull the wool over our eyes.
But yeah, historically, there was a period that the U.S. went through such a big global conflict with another superpower that everything about communism has been completely tarnished. So I understand why terms like communist and anarchist are seen as dirty words to people who aren't educated enough, right? So the messaging is probably really important as well, especially like Eva, if you're now you're becoming a public figure, you're becoming the voice of a wonderful, lovely community, stuff like that, right? So I think it is really, really awesome that you're educating yourself on all this and you want to learn more, and you're reading books on it and stuff, right? And I'm in the same boat. I'm sure everyone here, right? Like everyone here has a community of people. They're trying to better. So I think the messaging is really important. So that might be something we could discuss, right? Like what exactly do you do to bring some of these ideas to the table? That's an important topic as well.
Yeah.
Oh, quickly.
Absolutely.
I was also going to throw out there, not that we need to get into it right this second, but if anyone wants to quickly, like, if y'all want to like quickly summarize or understand a summary of like the historical precursors to communism, even like before Marx, but like we'll just say like the writing of the Communist Manifesto as sort of an anchoring point. I think that's really important, kind of to understand how we got there. Maybe it's just because I'm a part-time historian, so I think that like the historical context is super important. We can't possibly understand it unless we do that. So
I go over feminist theory history all the time. I'm there with you.
Yeah, it's super important.
Did you have particular points you wanted to go over real quick?
Oh, yeah, sure. Do we want to?
That's up to you all. I mean, I read the Communist Manifesto. I read my one piece. Wait, I read one other piece that's totally random, I think. But yeah, I'm down for it. What's up?
There's a
Are
lot
you
out
going
there.
to be reading Das Kapital?
Oh,
and,
God,
like,
Sam.
Letters to the Gotha program and all those other ones?
So what I'm gonna do is I wanted to hit a few like basic key points, but I don't know where exactly where we want to go with this conversation. So I figured we'd flow with it, see where you think is important to hit, and at the very end, before we take questions, I'm gonna say, hey nerds, what do I need to read? What do I need to like? What do you think is important key things? Because I'm telling you what. I want any excuse to go sit down at the library or sit next to the fireplace and do some reading.
Then I will tell you right now, if that's what you like, then the most important thing you could possibly do is read all the volumes of Capital. Have fun. Call me to your
Such a
Nice
big place to start. Oh my god, so big.
I'm totally joking. Well, you said you want to go.
Okay.
You want to go sit in the library, so like, there you go. Read Capital.
I'm like,
Bingo,
okay, you
bango.
gotta tell me if you're joking because it will go over my head.
Totally joking. Totally
Das
joking.
Kapital is like a good. It's good, but it's super dense and it's super thick. I don't know if that's like where you want to start with your theory. I'm very. So you said that you read the Communist Manifesto. Is that the only like? Have you engaged in any like specifically anarchist writings, or is that like where you kind of?
Are you going to drop the Conquest of Bread?
Of course.
That's even an interesting one too, but
I realized I
I-
just ooh-oohed that. I was like, Conquest Bread?
Conquest of bread. Ooh. I mean, who doesn't love the conquest of bread?
So regarding anarchy, I watched a thought slime video. And that's what I've got.
Okay.
That's where I'm at.
do you know if you like videos,
Oh,
do you
that's so
know
wholesome.
do you know Anarcho Pack?
No, I don't.
Okay, hold on. I'll link that to you later. Anarcho Pack does wonderful work. They're working on like a PhD on like anarchist history basically, and they're going to turn all of this into like a book whenever they're done with their PhD. I'm very interested. They make videos about it too. But there's there's a lot of things that you could read. God, fucking the Gotha program one.
Yeah.
God, Marx is so sassy. Oh my God, Marx is such a sassy writer. I'm sorry.
I mean, if we that's the thing. We should just have a stream like talking about how hilarious Marx's life was, and then like how actually we should get Ripley because Ripley did. Do y'all remember when Ripley did Marx and Engels as Rick and Morty?
Yeah, that was on my stream. And
That was
so funny.
Fucking amazing. Like I
Yeah,
feel
it
like
was
we could
so
just
funny.
do like Marx and Engels like entire history of existing, but have it voiced by Ripley in
Here's-
like. Oh my
Well,
God.
here's one of the things on that, Eva. The reason I don't identify as a Marxist-Leninist, I usually don't identify as any kind of like I'm based on a historical figure because they're all so problematic, right? And Marx and Engels were both brilliant in that they identified a lot of what exacerbates, these problems and class struggles within society. But at the same time, they were products of their time, and like Marx dabbled a little too much into things like phrenology, right? And that was more a byproduct. Like he was racist, and that was a byproduct of him growing up in that area. I'm not excusing it by any means, but that's why I don't say like I'm a Marxist, right, or I'm a Leninist, right?
Historical materialism.
Exactly. Right,
Yay!
of course, yes. A byproduct of the very things that you're identifying.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's very sad, and it might be something that people weaponize against you. So that's why I would say it's awesome that you have read the Communist Manifesto, and ideally you've taken some things from that. But also, I'm sure, and the other people on this panel are going to do it. Pepper that in with a whole bunch of other kind of authors and literature. And there's also some great female anarchists and female
Emma Goldman.
Emma
Fuck
Goldman.
yeah.
Oh, wow,
Everyone
incredible, right?
always recommends me Emma Goldman, and that's it.
I mean, have you
gotta
seen
dive
her?
in.
She wore a fucking monocle.
She's pretty-
Like how
True.
how
It's
more
true.
like Emma
Emma
Goldman
Goldman
is
was
actually
Yeah.
actually fucking it's like the style, my style aesthetics.
Mhm.
Like it just
Where's
oh my
your
God,
monocle
yeah.
then, huh? No.
I want a monocle. I always use the monocle emoji. I love that one. I like to pretend that I could ever pull off wearing a monocle.
You like to pretend to be a fat cat capitalist. I get it. We all like to
what?
pretend.
No, I mean Emma took it back. She took it back for the anarchists.
It's okay. We all get it. No.
I feel like I really want to
Bougie.
at the risk of possibly like talking for too long, I really want to like summarize like the precursors to communism and anarchism, because they kind of grew out of the same conditions, material conditions. There's a really fucking amazing and interesting history of anarchism in both the United States and in Europe. But I think that the history of anarchists in the US has mostly been like erased, probably because they did a lot of like blowing stuff up, which like doesn't we don't look so kindly on those things, I guess, these days. But for context though, the conditions leading up to, I guess, the development of the theory of communism were, as most people know, like slavery, and then, like Lance said, serfdom. And we had feudalism, wherein basically you were sometimes I'm going to sound like a feudalism like apologist, or that I'm like harkening back to the good old days of feudalism when before commodity fetishism, before people realized that the landowners realized that a rock was a good, was a commodity, a stick was a commodity, right?
A human being is a commodity.
A human being is a commodity. So before, basically, you had the people, whether they be serfs or just regular farmers, whatever, that lived on parcels of land that were owned by landowners, and they usually had like it was given to them usually by the monarchy in some way. Just to be reductionist about it, they had an army or policing, and they weren't police, but basically like a small army that would protect them from invasions and things like that. And in return for this land and this protection, they would give back to they would pay like a sort of tax, whether in like actual like money or in goods, things like bread. It wasn't a great system. They still lived in kind of abject poverty, but there was we had the commons, which is basically the idea that the earth is there, the stuff on the earth is there for everybody to use, and it's not a commodity. And so if somebody needed some sticks for a fire, they could go get some sticks. They could just go get them. And then people had their bits of land that they could farm, and they had a system where they rotated things for sustainability, et cetera, et cetera. So the commons, better enclose that quick. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So with the basically, well, there's multiple factors for this, but without going too deep into it, realization that these things can be commodified, like, oh, sticks are worth money, like firewood is something that people need. I could become more rich by selling those things, by making it illegal for the people who live on this land. And also they were quite often kicked off of the land and forced to move into the cities that were growing, and like all of those things that used to be held in common by people now became commodities that could be sold, and again, things that everybody needed. So it's like, well, if everyone needs clean drinking water, I can get super rich by basically enclosing this land and saying no one's allowed on it, or else you can't just take water from here, or we'll kill you, but I'll sell it to you.
You're talking about Nestle,
for a
right?
premium. Yeah. Nestle.
Nestle, sorry.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. So that you have like basically the Enclosure Act is part of that, where there's a whole bunch more details to it. I got into it in depth on my stream a few months ago, but another factor, massive contributing factor, was the Industrial Revolution, or the growing industrialization across Europe. So suddenly you have these basically labor becoming automated or easier to do, basically because of technology that was being developed. So you have this growing petit bourgeoisie, this growing middle class. And in the case of France, which is it sounds like a cliche, but it's kind of one of my fields of expertise, you have this really bizarre system with monarchy and nobility, where they literally like collected taxes from the people, from the peasantry, if you will, from literally everyone else, for doing nothing. Literally, for like, I'm not joking, I'm not exaggerating. They did nothing. They just existed, and they got paid to do this. And they really did, as Lexi said earlier, they really did believe that they were, absolutely justified and deserved to just be paid to exist. And I mean, even among the peasantry, where reading was like literature was not accessible, people were not taught how to read. They were, taught how to recite some shit from like the Bible, and that was about it. They really were just like, oh God, like how would like the world would crumble if the monarchy was gone? Like society would collapse. Even they thought so. But then you have this this burgeoning middle class where people are like, well, this kind of sucks because we're not nobility, we're not monarchy, like we're not clergy or monarchy, so we're still paying taxes to the monarchs, but like we're not nobility ourselves. So they're like, what is this fucking bullshit? So you kind of have this situation where a lot of people leftists, at least when I was growing up, like to hold up the French Revolution as sort of like this really great thing that happened. And not to say that it wasn't, there was a lot of good things that came out of it, but it was also the advent of modern Western capitalism, because now suddenly you have this coercive dialogue between the middle class, the petit bourgeoisie, basically being like, hey, these guys are fucking you over, but we'll do you better. If you work for us, you can be us. You can basically be one of us too. Look at what we did. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and work a little bit harder. Like
the idea of class mobility.
Exactly.
Petit bourgeoisie sounds so cute though.
It does. But yeah, like a lot of it was shitty because a lot of people see the French Revolution as a situation where there was a I guess people became cognizant of the inequality and the I guess just like lack the inhumanity of the way that people were treated, right? The fact that people would starve to death while people were literally like partying it up in Versailles, or people were dying, like entire families were being like dying off to build Versailles, for example, because they decided to build it on a fucking swamp. Like what the most flagrant display of like, we can do whatever the fuck we want because we have like just absolutely unjustifiable amounts of wealth. Let's just build a whole palace on a bog. That's fine and cool and good. So
well, I think it's important to note too, like this is like 100% what like Mark said would happen too.
Yep.
That like you go through capitalism. Capitalism is in like some stage that you get to skip. You go through it. The class antagonisms like exist in such a way that the fight for what you deserve is such that you will go through capitalism. And that just being like, just because you've gotten that far doesn't mean that you like give up whatever. That like, sure, we went through, we're now like in, capitalism, whatever. We're still fighting. You got to keep going. And I think for Eva, for reading for you, the things that Lottie is talking about here, you can glean a lot of this through mutual aid. It's Kropotkin. I think that's like a pretty easy, a pretty. Yeah, I don't feel like it's a particularly dense piece of theory that goes through the history of the way that, like we all like. A lot of animals are fairly social creatures. We are very social creatures. We like to help each other. Society moves forward through us helping each other. And it's weird how throughout history, we had a lot of things that were collectivized. We did a lot of shit together. We had a community that we all worked for and stuff like that. And then the states literally moved in and said, actually, this farm that you guys say that you all own together, no, one person owns this. I don't care who it is. We're literally going to kill you if you don't do exactly what we say here. One person owns this and you all get to work here and we'll buy from that one person to, some farm for the rest of the state or whatever. Yeah, kind of. That's that particular mutual aid.
I would say that I find Kropotkin relatively accessible compared to some other readings. Actually, quickly before I forget, can I plug a project really quick?
Absolutely, yes, please.
I had to kind of abandon this because it was like my birthday and there was a bunch of like ridiculous crap that happened, but also just tired. But I know that someone else started this project, but I don't know where they're at with it. But I started a similar project trying to do an accessible leftist library where I put put out a PDF document looking for people who would be willing to read, to do basically audiobook recordings of various, texts. And I got a ton of responses for readers, but my biggest problem is that I was also looking for project managers or facilitators. I hate the word manager, but a coordinator, because I am I can only do a tiny bit. I need someone who's a slightly more organized than I am, who can maybe help with a website or a forum or whatever. So if anyone's interested, please hit me up. You can find my go to my Discord, or you can message me on Twitter.
Lottie, do you know about the Radical Reviewer?
I do indeed.
Okay. I was gonna say,
love Radical Reviewer.
That's kind of Radical Reviewer shtick. If anyone wants to if you don't have time to read a whole bunch of theory and you want to just get a whole bunch of books about this kind of stuff,
the
buy
Cliff
a really
Notes.
cute dog. It's basically just a dog that reads you the Cliff Notes version of all these books for free. It's youtube.com/Radical Reviewer.
We love
What if
Radical
I can't
Reviewer.
speak dog?
Luckily, dog speaks English. Lucky for us. Yeah, because I'm a book geek. I'm a huge fucking book nerd. So I love audiobooks, and I love having accessibility to audiobooks. So if people want to actually read a full text, I thought it would be a good idea to I tried to do something similar in university with textbooks, but Capitalism doesn't like that so much, because textbooks are a huge fucking cash cow. They're not going to let me make free audiobooks of university textbooks. So
Yeah.
One thing I would say to pepper in everything Lottie's been talking about, Eva, is that I think a really easy argument you can make for people who want to defend capitalism as it is, right? Because I think the problem on the left is sometimes lefties shit on capitalism so much they don't actually reflect upon any of the things that it did positively, right? For example, the fact that we're all talking right now on these different computer devices and coming to you through the power of the internet, the invention of these devices like cell phones, all that came from actually socialized programs. That came from the military. That came from technology that was developed through a lot of government spending, stuff like that. But the ability to have all this stuff be abundant and cheap comes at the hands of immense human suffering, right? To have these cell phones, for example, and these computers, we have to mine a whole bunch of minerals in Africa. We have to have people in China whose working conditions are so terrible they want to commit suicide and jump out of the windows, but we don't let them because we put up nets. That's our solution to it.
God,
fun times.
So this is where we're at. This is where we're at. We're we can't this is kind of morbid, but to the point where
sorry. You guys keep going. Give me just one moment.
Yeah.
The level of control exerted over people's lives is such that you can't someone is prevented from committing suicide not because of not out of concern for their well-being, but literally to keep them a body, a cog in the machine, a worker. It's wild.
It's the definition of
I'm so sorry.
Right?
Yeah.
You all here to help me learn? I have a niece. I'm just wait a minute. I'm getting communism 101. Give me a second so that I can indoctrinate you later.
Nice.
I can indoctrinate you later. But what I was going to tell you, Eva, is that a really easy thing for messaging is that the version of capitalism we have right now, some people call it late-stage capitalism, and as Lottie explained earlier, it's also known as post-industrialized capitalism, right? Capitalism has gone through a lot of different evolutions throughout history. The original versions of capitalism that popped up after feudalism, mercantile capital, exactly, was one of them, which is basically a form of usury. But they started and died out in different areas, right? There was a serf rebellion, but capitalism kind of came up, and it existed, and maybe it died out, and different forms came, and then it evolved, it changed a lot when it went through the North Atlantic slave trade, when it went through the industrialization of the last 100 years, things like that. So because capitalism has not been in its original form, like any other economic system, it changes and evolves. You can argue that, hey, you love capitalism, you love all the bounty that you have in North America, all these wonderful possessions. That's great. I want to evolve it, right? We can make things better. We can make things more equitable for people around us. So that is a really easy idea, I find, for messaging as well, that people are receptive. So instead of saying hey, I'm not looking to create a violent armed revolution and murder people in the streets, I'm trying to evolve the current system we have to become a post-capitalist society.
One thing I was going to add, you mentioned that, you know, we can only have these things for as cheap as they are. And I know that you didn't. I wanted to clarify. I don't think that this was like a mistake or a misunderstanding on your part, but I wanted to I guess expand upon that or clarify that there's this idea of like, you know, anti-civ or like, you know, anarcho-primitivism or something, that like we, in order to have a revolution.
This is so funny.
By the way, I made the best fucking joke on Twitter yesterday, I thought, and nobody thought it was funny. Because sorry, I'm gonna derail for a second. As a paleoanthropologist, one of the things that like, this is so important to me. I need to explain my joke so that someone will think it's funny.
I'm going to Twitter right now. Actually, I'm not even gonna lie.
So, I have to have surgery on my jaw because I have an overbite, right? And like my top, like my maxilla like sticks out over my mandible, and they kind of fit like this, right? That is a thing that we do not see in the fossil record of any hominins, but any modern anatomical like.
Sorry,
ignore me. That's okay. You know, anatomically modern humans, we don't see that until we became agrarian, until we became sedentary. We started, you know, like animal husbandry, things like that, which is, I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing, but like I was thinking about how fucked up it is, like that I have to have this surgery to correct my jaw, which is kind of like it's a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like not a mutation, but it's a pathology of sorts, and it's because of agrarian sedentary you know, society. And I no one else is gonna think this is funny, I'm realizing as I'm saying it. No one is gonna think it's funny.
We're all on board with you.
I posted big words, and I'm like,
I posted a picture, like just of like the title of like a specific study on this, where it just says malocclusion, which is like, you know, basically your teeth fucked up, and dental crowding arose 12,000 years ago with earliest farmers. And then I wrote this week on I'm not anti-civ, but ...
Yeah, you had to explain it to me, because otherwise I'm just like, what is happening? But I posted something recently like this, where it was like, I was talking about like Lolita and Codona fashion styles, and I was like, I used to want to find a Codona, but now I can be the Codona, and everyone's just like,
are you fighting wolves?
I'm like, no one knows what the fuck I'm talking about. Never mind.
I dead ass, like, I used to live in Japan, and I have no idea what that is. That's super funny.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's the struggle. It's like these niche interests.
The thing with the jaw thing is just because we stopped chewing tough food. We used to chew a lot of tough foods. With the you know, the development of farming and animal husbandry, we started drinking milk. We started being able to eat softer foods.
Don't worry, I still cook my steaks well done.
Maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe I need to start eating meat and just start making it really tough, and then my jaw. Well, it became a genetic adaptation, or it's actually like a pathology. We're in a intermediate stage of some kind of evolution. We're still evolving to deal with you know, the adaptations to diet. Anyway, this is not a paleoanthropology stream.
It is,
but you
now.
know, these things are relevant. They are fun. I
was like, it's gonna get real vegan very soon. I can already see.
I was just like, Lexi, by the way, I don't know if you saw my chat earlier. Someone was like, are you gonna ask Lexi about veganism? And I'm like, I'm not ambushing her, but while we're on the topic, I'm kidding. We'll have a different stream for that.
I completely forgot what I was talking about before I derailed into my joke about.
Lance had mentioned the fact that a lot of the stuff that we use currently in society is paid for on the backs of people who can't even kill themselves.
Thank you. I love the way that you described that. Yeah, basically.
It's a fucked up system, yeah.
But here's the thing, right? And that's how I got into anti-civ. Okay, a lot of people think that anarchism, socialism, communism all involve some kind of regressive state of being or abolition of society or civilization. No. Innovation is not a product of capitalism. Innovation is a product of just human ingenuity. It's within our nature. It's something that we do. It is the crown jewel of what makes human beings special. What separates us from other non-human animals. We will always innovate. There's no question about that. It's not a matter of capitalism. It's about furthering, either the survival or enjoyment of our lives. It's something that we will always do. So people who say that, if we abolish capitalism, there will be no innovation. Do you really need 300 different brands of fidget spinner? I don't fucking think so. Like that's ridiculous. Like
Okay,
I
maybe
need
not
to be
fidget
able to
spinner,
choose.
but my cereal. Listen. I don't even eat cereal. I can't say that. I don't even eat cereal. I can't
you don't?
say it.
Oh, I do. I love
Raisin Bran.
Well, but see, that's actually a bit of an illusion, though. There's only 6 companies that control all the food that we consume in the United States, right? But Lottie, here's something that's really easy to explain to people. For example, in our current system, you have to buy a brand new cell phone every single year, right? Every year there's a new iPhone. It's iPhone
planned
1, 2,
obsolescence.
So there's planned obsolescence built into it. Whereas you could have a cell phone where you just replace parts, if that was a thing, right? So you could actually have the fastest cell phone all the time, way cheaper, if you didn't have to buy a brand new model with a brand new everything in it. You just had to upgrade the processor, you just had to upgrade the RAM, you just had to upgrade individual pieces, and that would be so much better. You would always have the fastest and best cell phone, and it would be way cheaper.
Oh, totally.
There's a way more efficient way if the profit motive wasn't the only reason why people produce products.
I think that you can try to find maybe like a wedge. I don't know the way that I want to say this, but like competition, like they're not competing to give you the best product. That's not like what the competition is for. The competition is to make the most money, and you do on some level have to make something that people want. But the thing that people want, what's the old Ford quote where he says like, well, if I asked what the people wanted, they would have asked for like a faster horse when he gave them cars. People like the thing that they want, like you can make someone want. I mean, hell,
probably
marketing,
had the N-word in there
advertising
somewhere or something.
Well, that's the thing.
But
supply and demand. That's not. They actually. Like it's backwards. It's the other way around. Like things are created and then the market responds. So like if Google comes up with a new phone and they'd spend years planning this new phone and millions and millions of dollars and tons of bits of plastic and whatever, and basically slave wages in factories in China and pollution and all, blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. And then they launch this phone and it's a flop. Nobody likes it. They hype it up. Nobody likes it. And so now all of a sudden you have like millions, because they'll make them. They won't just make a couple to see how they do. They'll plan. They'll be like, no, we got this. And they're going to make millions of them. They just end up in a landfill in Africa with like children literally like trying to pick out these like parts to sell and completely damaging their environment. But the thing is that we can have these things. They wouldn't go away. And we could have them, like say we still had some monetary system, like they wouldn't necessarily have to be really, really expensive. The reason that things are expensive and that people, in the global south make slave wages, and the reason that resource extraction is done with absolutely no fucking like long-term oversight or, consideration for the impact, the ecological impact, is because people want to maximize profits. And they have to do that by driving down costs and wages. So they have to pay people at the bottom, each tier, when it comes to, commodity development, from like mineral resource extraction all the way up to like, the CEO. They have to drive down costs on every level, right? So that means extracting resources as efficiently and most cost effective as possible, which usually means doing it in a completely unsustainable way, doing it in maintain, and then also there's the incentive to maintain destabilization in places in the global south so that these resources can be extracted quickly and cheaply and with, again, like I said, no consideration for the ecological impact or the human cost. All of these things are done so that a very few people, a CEO, a shareholder, a manager, whatever, like a very, very few select group of people can make absolutely just unfathomable amounts of wealth. And I like, we did this experiment the other day where like, I know a lot of people have seen it with you spend, or like you are Jeff Bezos. and also spend Bill Gates's money. There's like two things, the two kind of online like games, if you will. Just to sort of put in perspective that
wait, you're Jeff Bezos and you spend Bill Gates' money?
No, sorry,
there's two different ones. One's where you're Jeff Bezos and one's where you're Bill Gates, and they both operate. And like one of them is like more of like a storytelling one,
it's
where
very
like
dark.
as you do different things. It's the Jeff Bezos one, where as you do different things, it's like it tells a story around you, like, oh, your family's trying to break down the door. You know, they're
very
trying to stop you.
Kafka-esque.
The other one is just like it gives you like a whole list of things that you could buy, and seeing how like you could buy like every like football team and every like 10 Lamborghinis or whatever, like a bunch of different things as Bill Gates with his amount of money. They're both
and still have billions of dollars.
Sure.
That Bunny actually brought up a really good point the other day, that people think that like a billionaire is just kind of like a tiny step up from a millionaire.
Yeah, that the difference in those two numbers is really hard to visualize.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think people can really conceptualize how much money that is, because you think of like, okay, a house in where I live is $1 million. You can, like the average cost of a house in like the inner city of where I live is like $1 million plus. That's on the Lance, you live in Vancouver. That's like you're like lol. $1 million.
$3 million, I think, is the average cost of a home here now.
That's the average. So $1 million. The difference between $1 billion is roughly 1 billion. Chloe, thank you for that. I appreciate that. But this is obscene, unjustifiable amounts of accumulated and hoarded wealth, where like these people literally can buy islands and still have billions, like in the hundreds of billions left over. There is
also,
no...
I can't remember if it was you, Lottie, or if it was Cyberwitch who was talking about commodity fetishization.
I think we've all brought it up a little bit, yeah.
Oh, we all brought it up a little bit, but that's something else that's really
we should probably explain that.
Well, you have to think that in the last 100 years, we kind of really what's the word to say this? We've accelerated the concept of commodity fetishization. We've started to
I talk about this a lot.
It's not as sexy as it sounds, I promise.
No, not as not that kind of fetish.
But we've basically we've become a consumer society, and we've equated the idea of having a better life with products, right? So your success in life is basically determined by how much stuff can you acquire. Do you have a very nice house? Do you have 2 cars, right? And we extend that even to like our partners, right? Do you have a beautiful wife or husband or non-binary partner? Do you have a beautiful dog? Do you have
we do it to our own bodies?
Exactly. All these kind of things, right? Whereas it never used to be that your success in life was based entirely on your ability to accumulate wealth, which it kind of is now, right?
Here's an interesting question. Even outside of like your accumulation of wealth, the question that bothers me, actually, like it hurts me a little bit, is why are there people who are living like, let's just give a number, $100,000 a year. They work some job. It's pretty average, middle class, whatever. It's okay. They do okay. They have a house. They have cars. They've got a partner. They have kids, and yet they hate their life. Like they're just desperately unhappy. They're so unhappy with every piece of it, and they try to deal with it. They go and they buy new things. How many things do we buy just to have for a second and then throw away? And then we got a little bit of pleasure out of it, and then we just feel
constantly.
Shit. Like, there's like so I'm sure, God, I talk about Z-Check too much.
Oh, please.
I love talking about Z-Check.
We do love talking. We would love to hear about Z-Check.
So wait, has everyone here watched any or like listened or read any Z-Check?
Yes, I like it.
Pure ideology.
Eva, are you at all familiar with Z-Check?
Of him one time because he debated Peterson or something.
Oh yeah, that was
oh my God, what a hilarious debate. Yeah.
Bodied. The best part is that like Zizek like basically made all the arguments against communism before Peterson even got to like read his, and he was like, well, I was gonna just throw that out.
I mean, Peter, I don't know, we have to get into that. But Zizek has like a lot of really good pieces. One of the things that he's talked about is Starbucks, how the general consumer ideology or whatever says that you feel bad, and to compensate for feeling bad, you go buy a thing. So whatever it is, I don't care. We go buy a thing. And once you go buy a thing, you get to have it and you get to feel good for a little bit, and then you get to throw it away and you feel bad. You don't have it anymore. It broke, it's done, whatever. You got the pleasure out of it. And that you on some level like recognize a little bit of what's happening there. But that places like Starbucks factor in like the cost of you feeling bad. They like even have it like on the walls and stuff. I don't even know how much this is like this anymore. But where they say like, oh, like sure, like our coffees are a little bit more expensive, but that little bit more expensive is going to pay for some sort of, of feeding the farmers that got these coffee beans for you or whatever. You know, it goes to help their lives in some way. Yeah, where you factor in like the bad feelings like into the cost of what you're buying, and like it's like a really sick way of like capitalism trying to co-opt your like bad feel, like the fact that you recognize that you're in a system that's like what.
I'm literally writing a book about this, and it started out as a YouTube video, and then I got longer and longer and longer, and I was like, well, I guess we're writing a book, because it's yeah, like you said, like the commodification of literally everything down to like your own feelings. I talk about this a lot with like the concept of aid, of foreign aid, and like charity, like that being a basically being sold off as a commodity. I think that I was going to bring this up earlier too. Marx made a lot of accurate predictions. Like he was correct in almost everything, except for one particular thing that's super important. He super underestimated the ability of capitalism to subvert movements by commodifying it, co-opting and commodifying any of those movements, or to render them, basically harmless. And that's the thing, it's actually kind of fascinating if you think about it. There's no other economic system that does this so well, where literally anything and everything can be commodified right down to, I always talk about being like chasing the proverbial carrot, where like now we have become the carrot. It's like this fucking like Ouroboros of like, it's terrifying. We're influencers, people, we used to hold up celebrity as this thing to strive towards. But now with social media, we have regular people who make it, who become rich off of like just posting selfies and shit. But they're doing that to try to be like celebrities, but a lot of the time they're not really doing that well. Like they're, renting a yacht to go take photos on, or a plane or something, but they're selling that back to other people. And they're not just selling the stuff that they're selling, like the actual commodities, the things that they're advertising. They're selling the potential of that lifestyle to anyone else, because everyone's trying to be an influencer. So we're all chasing the carrot, but we are the carrot. It's a nightmare.
So says the influencer.
It's a philosophical night. I'm not an influencer. Oh God. Look, I've only posted like 2 pictures of my butt on the internet. I am nowhere near influencer status.
By the way, Lottie, I just noticed in the background Pizza Slut. I've never
seen that.
I've never seen that before.
It's been there the whole time. That's like, it's been there for years. That is the best thing I ever spent my student loan money on.
What's the butt pic to influencer ratio? I need how many do you need before you make it?
I feel like, I mean, at least in my case, like that's all the only way that I would ever become an influencer, because I'm so subversive and everything else I have to say, that I think that I would just have to post like at least 70% more butt pics, and then maybe I would make it. If people start paying me.
I believe in you. You go for your dream.
Thank you. Oh God, it's too much work. Somebody sent me a curious cat. They're like, have you ever thought about doing like camming or like selling nudes online? I'm like, yeah, but like I'm literally like, it's too much work. I'm too lazy. I'm too lazy. I mean, I'm also like really sleepy because I have a sleep disorder, but like it's actually too much work to do. That I'd rather nerd on the internet if somehow that seems like less work. But taking butt. Have you ever tried to take a butt pic?
I was gonna go into that. I was like,
it makes it so much easier.
Level of
even
difficulty
still
in taking a butt pic, I feel like yeah, I totally hear you when you say that's too much work. Like that is too much work. Period.
I mean, trying to take like dirty pics of like other parts too is like even it involves like contortionist skills with like photography skills and like lighting. There's too many things involved in this, and I'm just like, I don't even like taking selfies. That's too much work. It's too much.
Chat's like all about selfie sticks right now.
I mean, yeah, I have a selfie stick, but even then, it's just. Oh. I need like a counterweight on one side, because what I find sometimes when I try to take a butt pic with like a selfie stick is it's like wobbling because the one end is too heavy.
Just set up a timer. Just go set your phone somewhere.
Oh my
But, like,
gosh.
Then I gotta go check it and be like, oh, that doesn't look so good, and like then
You know
I'll
what? It's
be-
okay. I get it.
I
Yeah.
hear you.
I understand.
The struggle,
you guys
struggle
can
is too
take all
much.
the butt pics for me.
Yeah, I'll take twice as many to make up for you not taking any.
Thank you,
There we
comrade.
go. That is praxis.
That is
That's
actually
praxis.
right there. It truly
I
is.
have noticed since the butt conversation started, the viewership has gone up by like 40 people. I wonder if there's a way that you can incorporate that into theory, like
Every
to
single
red pill
time
people.
I get horny on main on my chat, my viewership goes like through the roof, and then I'm like, so let's talk about commodity fetishism, and it's like,
Your
I
butt
got a
pics.
commodity fetishism for you. Like,
Your butt pics, or you owning the means of production. All right, this is how we're connecting this back around.
okay, but actually, okay, here's a good question: is it you owning the means of production? It is in a sense, but it's also commodity fetishism.
Well,
It can be
okay, so we exist in a capitalist society, and no one. Okay, so all right, so if we wanted to really get into like some lefty theory, the Gotha
Yes,
program,
yes, yes,
the program,
yes.
or whatever, we have to recognize that you can't ever actually like we will always hold the stain of having like going through like a capitalist society. Like this will always be like a stain on like who we are as a people forever, and like we can't pretend like we're going to that like there are like patriarchal things around us all the time, and it's really frustrating how women's bodies get like objectified and stuff like that, and or even not even like women, like just feminine bodies generally, but even then there's like some like I don't know, the way the patriarchal society views bodies is really frustrating in general. But we'd have to get into like the way I don't know, like you could have I could understand someone saying that this isn't you owning the means of production, but I don't think I believe that. I think
was
it would
gonna-
be.
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Maybe to Eva, because I know.
It's been a little bit.
You,
Yeah.
Well, you've been the one asking all
I'm
the
like,
questions. But...
I let the communists and the anarchists run wild on my channel.
Anarchy.
Anarchy has happened. We got it. It's here.
We did it. We did
Well,
it.
I have a question directly related to what cyberwitchlexi was just talking about, and I think it's something that requires intersectional feminism. So I was curious: is it okay to objectify men's bodies right now as a way of kind of pushing back against the stereotype that women's bodies are typically?
You weren't asking me.
So
Because I do that
Yeah.
a lot on my stream. Like I objectify men quite a lot.
I think as long as you are making that point and emphasizing that this is not okay. This is a part of oppression, right? And it's not oppressing men to do this because they aren't facing oppression, but it's using an oppressive tool, right?
Okay.
So that's how I take it, but there is an increasing objectification of men's bodies in the media, which is a problem. It's just not rising to the levels that women's or feminine bodies are objectified. So
Okay.
God, Eva, you and I could actually have like an entirely, just as a side note, entirely different, like another stream about this, because I have some personal experience having. I worked in the fashion industry for like almost I worked in the cosmetic industry in general for over 10 years, but for like a 5 of it, I worked in the fashion industry, and like I have a lot of very bizarre insight into that in general, just like. Objectification of bodies in general. There's so many potential intersections to hit there, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I
write down a note to remember, or just DM me and let me know, because I am very
I have to write it
interested.
down too. I will forget as well, so I'm gonna write it down to make a
Okay,
note.
yeah.
I agree though. Like I don't think that like objectification of bodies, and again it's done in a way to, it comes back to capitalism really. Like it's not like we can appreciate bodies, we can appreciate physical attraction, we can appreciate beauty on like all different kinds of beauty. I just because I see like certain types of bodies in front of me all the time doesn't mean that I'm exclusively attracted to those types of bodies, but a lot of people are, right? And they actually they push back in their own brains where they're like, I can't like that look because it's not what I see everywhere, and also with their own bodies as well, right? And the goal is, I mean, I work directly in this industry where it's like literally to make people feel like shit about themselves as much as possible, and to surround them with pictures of beautiful people, beautiful white people, white bodies that are, fit and slim and under the age of 25, to sell people shit. Like that's the only goal.
Yeah.
It's just to sell them stuff that they don't need, which is fucking awful. But I don't think that commodifying men's bodies as like a pushback is like a good praxis.
Well, I'm curious. Wait, Lance, you said objectifying men's body. What did you mean?
Hell yeah. Oh,
What did you mean when you said objectify?
I'll be watching the stream, and then I'm kind of pushing it back against, I guess, maybe toxic masculinity and heteronormative behavior, where like guys aren't able to even admit that they are like sometimes attracted to men as well, right? So it'll be like, oh yeah, this guy is super hot, and then I'll say it, and then everyone's like, whoa, I thought you were like supposed to be straight. I was like, yeah, but he's still beautiful. Like, you can acknowledge that he's really beautiful. And then I'll be like, well, I don't think anyone's particularly 100% straight, 100% gay. Like, it's a spectrum, like anything else, right? Like it's fluid, like everything else as well, right? And then that just opens a new conversation. But it started out by me seeing a picture, it could be of Hassan or something, and then all of a sudden be like, and then be like, oh wow, yeah, that dude's really hot, right?
The way that you do it's always really nice, though. You're just always complimenting people, and that I feel like that's like totally not the same as
so yeah, I was curious, what did we think that we meant when we said objectification there? What were we imagining? Because here's what I'm thinking is so we all know the way that the I'm assuming we all know the way that the male gaze operates when we're talking about like film or something, the way that like the camera focuses on certain bodies and like on certain pieces of bodies, a girl walks away and then you get like the close-up ass shot or whatever. We don't get that kind of stuff for men very often, and I was thinking more of like that kind of like, we'll say like objectification, where we're looking at things through like an anti-male gaze or whatever, where we're like ogling men's bodies that way. And even then like I don't know that I would I don't think I have a problem with that. I think that part of the problem is that we like part of the current problem is that it's I want to be careful too, because I think there are like really bad ways you can do it. I haven't engaged with it enough to be able to comb them out or whatever. But I think that being able to understand that like we do like bodies, and that like it's okay to focus on them occasionally, and that part of the problem with the objectification of like feminine bodies tends to be that like it makes people see them as objects, see us as objects, see like that
it's almost dehumanizing.
But it's part of it is because it only happens like in that one direction, that like if we having it in multiple directions kind of makes it more of like hey, we like bodies, like we all like bodies, we like each other. Not all, I know there's like asexual people, but even they like bodies sometimes, so depends a lot of stuff, but like most of us tend to like each other's bodies. This is just the way that humans tend to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So that goes into the conversation of, again, if we're gonna use this as a tool to point out how we are treating women's bodies or feminine bodies, I think that's okay as long as we have that conversation, which I absolutely think Lance would go into. And then have a conversation of how do we appreciate each other's bodies without objectifying people?
Agreed.
What would this look like? So I think that is where I would go. And I agree, the objectification from the terms of commodifying bodies and doing it as a means to sell things, that is always going to be a hard no. But I don't think Lance is trying to sell anything regarding his
What are you selling, Lance? What are you selling?
Selling an end to toxic masculinity and
what's the price?
That could come back. What do you buy? I mean,
that's from Resident Evil, right? What are you selling? What are you
buying? I can't remember I can't even remember what video game that is. I'm too old. Too many video games. But like if you're not trying to sell, if you're not commodifying something, but also in a more interpersonal sort of situation or perspective, not reducing, like you said, not reducing the person to their physical characteristics. Like, I think it really depends on these. And how much do I want to? Okay, never mind. I'm not going to go off on this tangent. But like we have this thing where we started one issue with like leftists is that we've started essentializing. I mean, actually, this isn't a new thing, but we have a problem with essentializing shit, where we try to say like, okay, we extremely cannot do one thing or the other.
Are you reading theory while you're teaching it? Because that's
No.
my days.
I was looking for a specific quote, but I can't. I have this problem, like while I'm streaming, my ADHD does not allow me to actually like read or process it. So I'm just like flipping through this book, but my brain is not actually processing any of the information. So, but
Speed reading.
no, I'm just not good. I'm not good. But we have gotten to, and I think that I have disagreements with Zizek, but I think he talks about this too, where we've kind of forgotten, or we essentialize to the point where we've forgotten how to interact, or we not forgotten, but we don't know how to have conversations or dialogue about individual interactions and nuance, within a situation. So say, for example, a good friend of yours, like, someone like, say, like Andre, if Andre comes on, you have a relationship, you know each other, you have a sort of rapport, a familiarity of sorts. So if you you had Andre on, I think with the first time that him and I met, and you were like, oh, you mentioned him being like a very attractive man or something. You know each other, so this is not a weird thing to do. But if you do it to somebody who you've never met before, you don't have that level of familiarity with, or personal or emotional sort of investment, that's really fucking weird, right? Because then it's like your first instinct when relating to that person is not the relationship that you have and appreciating them as a human being. It's like noticing how they look and commenting on it, right? It sounds really weird because like Japanese society is like really fucking backwards in a lot of ways, but there is something that I learned, at least in but just interacting with people in Japan, and like how they deal with interpersonal relationships and like familiarity and things like that, where like you can only call people by, and there's no, somebody was asking me recently, like, how do I know what like suffix to use for someone? And I'm like, I don't know, like you just know. Like you can ask, sometimes you can like it is polite to ask sometimes, but like there's certain like social things where it's just like inappropriate to use a really familiar suffix to refer to someone. But yeah, it's kind of like it's a somewhat unspoken thing. And if we essentialize all of our human interactions to like, what was the thing recently? The like, where I agree with this in part, the like, are you in like asking people for consent basically to ever like come to them with like a heavy topic? And having like a sort of contract where it's like, are you currently in the correct emotional headspace to deal with this thing? And like,
I don't know if you did.
it's like, I was like, oh God, because like there's the consent aspect of it that's important, but there's also an aspect of it that is just like becomes, we're so afraid of doing things wrong, and trying to carve out this what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I guess this sort of like praxis, or what we consider praxis, that we've started essentializing human interpersonal relationships in areas where like we need to have I think it's more pressing to have a dialogue about like how to just like respect each other and like try to navigate like nuance. And it's very difficult. It's difficult because there's a lot of different barriers to this. Like it's something that we just can't do. But we're not talking about that, right? We're trying to put like really strict rules on some human interactions that we just can't. Like it's
so my pushback on that would just be some people with some social disabilities, right?
Well, that's a problem, right?
So that's part of it. But then additionally, I have had friends, and I think it's almost like a context-based thing where a lot of like my mods know that they know when I'm going through a lot. So when they come up to me, they say like, hey, I know you've got a lot on your plate right now, but, and then like say like, do you have room for more? And I think that's really important. I think the way that was portrayed is super duper cringe, right? Where like, I'm going through a bad time. Do you have a moment for me? But I think it's more along the lines of like, we are all mutually. struggling. We are all mutually struggling. And like, do you have a moment now? Because it's really hard when I have a comrade who's coming to me about like their sexual assault and I'm processing my own, you know, and I'm like, I am having problems with PTSD, but this person is just like dumping their whole sexual assault history on me. And I'm like, holy fuck, you know, like, but I just sit there through it and I bear it down. And I don't know, like, would it have been fair to me to be like, I am actually personally falling apart right now? Like, I can't do this. Like, I don't feel okay doing that. But at the same time, would it have been fair to say like, hey, Eva, I don't know what's going on, like, but I have a lot and I'm do you have a moment to talk? It's a pretty deep topic, you know?
I mean, sorry, I'm not saying that the concept in and of itself is bad. I absolutely actually totally agree with it because I can handle very little. Like I like my like emotional and like mental capacity throughout the day, like I can only handle so much. So if people come and like dump a bunch of shit on me, I tend to get overwhelmed and go into like a full recluse mode. I think maybe I probably articulated this poorly. I think this actually comes back to what I mentioned earlier, that, you know, this sort of like hippie thing with, you know, the difference between a lot of like, say, like MLs, you know, Marxist-Leninists, or some communists that, you know, think that we need to do this. And I mean, I agree. We definitely need to get shit done like immediately. There's a lot of things that are very pressing, but there is a shift in the way that we interact with each other, the way that we interact with our environment, the planet that we live on, everything, the way that we perceive those things that needs to happen. Because the way that we're looking at things now, we're doing it from this like super fucked up perspective where we are having to essentialize things or put things in tiny boxes, or to put some kind of weird like pseudo-authoritarian kind of system over it to make it work, right? And it's these awkward growing pains that we're going through. We desperately want things to be better, but we don't know how to go about it. But it really like it sucks because it is in essence idealist, but I think it's also simultaneously, you know, kind of materialist as well, because
that's the reason I'm trying to get really crucial about my messaging, and also about how exactly these things can take place in reality, right? So that's why I don't advocate for like luxury gay space communism, which sounds awesome. I want it too, right? Like that sounds beautiful. I would love to have I'd like posadism sounds awesome too, like having having dolphins come down and save us and run everything. That sounds beautiful. I love this idea. I like, it's magical to me. But like if I'm having a genuine conversation with somebody who's like, so how do you actually achieve any of the things you're trying to achieve? How do you get to where you're trying to be? I want to have very tangible answers and pragmatic answers to that, right? And I mean, for those of you in the United States, I would say like a really important first step is getting someone like Bernie Sanders elected, not because I think Bernie Sanders is going to change the world, but because I think having Bernie Sanders as president would allow for a lot of things, such as the startups of worker cooperatives, as well as strong unionization take place. It'll be a lot easier under Bernie Sanders. Those are important first steps to take.
I would add to that and say, I know that I'm all constantly advocating for this, but also another good step is to like, you know, get in touch with like you know, start working with marginalized groups in your communities, learn from them, listen to them. You know, if you're not immediately part of one yourself, especially the Indigenous communities that exist, because like, man, they've been fucked over. But I think that the process of if not material decolonization of like killing, what did Andre say, like killing the settler in your brain, like beginning to conceptualize things differently by talking to people who are if not fully entrenched in it, at least have a legacy of it that they've inherited. You know, a lot of that kind of those stories and those traditions and those cultures were kind of destroyed, for a lack of a better word, like completely in the United States. But there are people still hanging on to those desperately, like they're desperately clinging to them. And I think it's really important to get in touch with those people as much as possible. It doesn't even have to be in your community, just I think in general.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I thought you're done. I was gonna say I like all of this. I was gonna say off of what Lance said. I agree, and I but the thing that I struggle with is that you
He's
have to work
attacking my
through...
brand personally. Okay, sorry, Lexi, go ahead.
You have to, well, okay, no, it's just that you have to work through like a lot of, you have to understand the way that different aspects of modern, like hyper consumerist capitalist ideology, like influence. I want to say this without it sounding like conspiratorial, because this is always what I worry about. When you talk about like the great big capitalist class that controls everything or whatever, it sounds super conspiratorialist. And that's why I like pulling back the artifice of, whatever fuck is going on in between all these things, the way that, individualizing people, the way that we have has turned us into like cogs and machines, all of this stuff. There's like, we can get like super deep into it. But just that I get worried that, so you can ask questions, or that, okay, the capitalist framing of certain questions makes it so that you will never have the like pragmatic data that you need to have certain conversations. And it drives me fucking crazy. I lose my mind. Oh my God, it hurts me so bad. But like, if you say something like, well, hey, I think it'd be really cool to like, make housing not a commodity. Maybe we should do something like kind of like rent control, or, work on like a couple policies at once. Well, then the question becomes like, well, we can see that, like the capitalists will say something along the lines of like, well, we can see that rent control doesn't best serve, a couple of different groups, without, making the connection to the fact is like, oh, it doesn't help these groups under like a neoliberal, like
Marx talks about this too.
That, well, yeah, but like there's like a bunch of different times where like the questions that get put to you and the data that you need to like answer those questions in a way that will convince somebody are such that you can't win. And so you have to like take a step back. And in my opinion, I think there's tons of things that you have, like we have like a lot of really good data for that we don't need to like, we could do this, like as long as someone like you can like give people the idea. I'm sure you do this too, plenty, Lance. Democracy in the workplace, super easy thing. Like, hey, you like democracy in the government? Why do you like it there? Well, what if we brought it over to this other part of your life that you spend? Really good. Like it's super good messaging, super clear, super simple. You have to work through some of like the idea of like personal property, like, oh, we have property rights, and that's why when I start a company, you're not my co-boss. Then well, okay, well, yeah, sure, but maybe you don't ever have to start a company. Maybe we can do these things together, always. Work together. This is a community thing. We cooperate. This is the way that society, maybe should operate. It's better when we work together. Working by yourself tends to lead to other people getting hurt. Like I just get really, there's a lot of things where you just like, you will never have like the data for it, because like the question is, saying the question is malformed feels like an out, but it's not supposed to be.
Yeah. I just want to quickly address someone in your chat, Eva, who's talking about Russia and China being communist. China isn't communist, right? It's a hybrid model. It's basically like I would call it a communist dictatorship quasi hybrid with capitalist, because it does trade with both in the global capitalism, as well as the fact that its policies, it has a lot of state-owned and state-run enterprises, but at the same time, it allows for small marketplaces to take place in the country. It basically wanted to improve upon the quote-unquote communism of the USSR, because that was a very insular community, so they didn't allow for global exchange with the global markets. But at the same time, when anyone talks about China, there's two things I think people need to realize. One, it has done what America did in centuries in a matter of decades, which is, if you were trying to respect like economic growth, if that's the only thing that's important to you, then look to China. China has grown at a rate that like it pales in comparison to the United States. The United States pales in comparison to China in terms of its economic growth, but it also comes at the hands of a whole bunch of super fucked up stuff, right?
Gutter oil.
Yeah, there's suppression of freedom. You don't have access to information. The fact that they're turning into some kind of dystopian nightmare where you actually have like a Black Mirror system where you get social points for what you do. The internment camps of the Uyghur minority Muslim communities in China also super fucked up. Like, but both can be true simultaneously, right? They are they're an economic powerhouse. They're winning capitalism, right? And at the same time, they are like a horrific state in a lot of ways.
That brings me to a question that I am just mind blown, because I was like, oh, I'm not ready for this. I didn't bring all the questions I wanted. And then we had like one question and everyone's like, boom, we're going. So thank you for that. I think I learned a lot. I have a lot of different directions to go. But one thing I really wanted to get towards is what is like the main point that you hear that's like responding to communism as like anti-communist or anti, for you perhaps, socialist, or that might work better for you, Lance. But what are the main points you hear, or the main point you would specify, and how do you respond to it? Like, what are your thoughts around it? Because as my thing is, I'm going to be getting into studying this, and you can already probably see, like, people see communism in the title, and we know how it goes as streamers. Like, you're going to get, everyone just wants to bring you the repetitive points we hear again and again. I exist as a non-binary person. There's only two genders. There's only two genders. And I can arm people with quick ways to deal with that. Or I can tell him to ban the fucker and call him a fucker, like, and move on. But what are the main points, or the main point? Try to choose one if you can, that you hear again and again and again. And what's some information on it?
In relation to communism specifically?
Yeah, you can do socialism if you want, but
Well, yeah, with both communism and socialism, that every single way it's been enacted throughout human history, it's failed. And you can see that in places like Venezuela, where they're literally eating rats on the street because of how terrible it's been. That's probably the talking point I hear the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere you've heard, so the point is
everywhere that either communism or socialism has been implemented, it's not only failed, it's made life worse for the people in the conditions that it has done so. And if it's done in modern day countries like Venezuela, it's coming at the cost of basically immense human suffering, and it fails because it's just it's inevitable. These systems are broken. That's why they fail. It's killed hundreds of millions of people. And don't get me wrong, regimes have killed millions and millions of people. The Maoist revolution, which changed an agrarian society into basically an industrial one, came at the hands of millions and millions and millions of deaths. Unless you're a tanky.
Imagine thinking that was a good idea.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
hey, farmers, why don't you start making metal for?
Yeah, yeah. Why don't you start making metal? Like, that's the easiest way to explain to someone who's heard of that way.
Yeah, you know what?
Farmers make metal.
You used to, farm rice, but how about you stop doing that and start making metal, because in case there's counter-revolutionaries. Oh shit! Now there's a famine. Oops.
Oh God. Oh boy. Okay. So what is your typical response to that?
To which one? I think I went all over the place there.
Your main point. The main point being
that communism kills. That point, basically. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a very quick lefty defense that, the problem with people saying that like this was a communist state is that there's no real one true communism, right? Like communism has never actually been tried, and if we tried it properly, it would actually work successfully. All these different variations or machinations of the different systems, right, have had different power structures, whether it be the USSR, in which the state was basically the ones that controlled the means of production, right? Venezuela, where they tried to heavily socialize things, but still had to deal with global capitalist markets. Venezuela's entire economy was based on oil, and once the United States starts putting embargoes on Venezuela, of course, their ability to sell their oil becomes very, very difficult. Things like that. I would say that what I'm advocating for, which is that we no longer have a relationship between employer and employee, is very, very simple messaging. It's very easy to understand, and that would get rid of a lot of the power dynamics and the hierarchical structures that I think are the root problem of a lot of these things.
Okay, thank you. I'm making notes just because, well, y'all are like dropping a ton of information on me. I'm just here in class, okay?
Well, okay. Remember at the start you said like, do you have things you recommend? Instead of telling you to go down a whole bunch of like, go read a ton of theory, right? I would say if you like podcasts, or if you like YouTube videos, start getting into Richard Wolff, Professor Richard Wolff. I've had the pleasure of interviewing him on my show before. He is basically one of the best messengers, or one of the best people for succinctly
putting this messaging in a modern day context. So it's very, very easy to understand. None of it's difficult. He's very charismatic. He's very entertaining. And at the same time, it is about modern day solutions to these problems instead of just utopian visions and dreams, right? Like, it would be amazing if we could have this, moneyless, stateless, classless society. But at the same time, how do we achieve things in the here and now? Because people are suffering in the here and now, right? We have, no matter what kind of intersectional, discrimination you face, whether you're like a person of color, whether you happen to be a member of the trans community, for example, people are suffering today. So how do we help them now? How do we help people in today's society?
Okay, thank you. All right, do you two, what about you, Lottie? Do you have a point that you hear again and again and again that's anti-communist?
Actually, well, I mean, like the one that Lance hit on is kind of like the big one, right? Like, oh yeah, communism kills. I'll actually twist that and say that we can believe that two things could be true at once. Like, there can be things that occurred under communism as it has been practiced or attempted to historically, and there can also be suppression and propaganda in Western media, in Western capitalist media at the same time. There's a lot of people who are like, well, anything that the West says about, the USSR is lies. Anything they say about China is lies, which is really fucking like, again, as a student of history, like, this is so frustrating to me because I have people telling me that like all the history that I've read is just Western propaganda, which is mind blowing to me because it's like, sure, I'm sure some of it is. That's totally true. Like, I've seen it in action, but when you have like, hundreds of accounts from different, scholars and academics and journalists and survivors, etc., who are writing the same things, like, this is not like a conspiracy. So we can, like, forgive me for being like the centrist here, but like, two things can be true at once. Like, you can be skeptical of Western narratives about socialism and communism, but that doesn't mean you have to go like super far on the other side and be like, genocides never happened, famines were totally.
That would be tanky.
That would be some tanky shit. Yeah. A lot of people are like, oh, genocide, the famines never happen because they just happen naturally. Here's the thing, like, famines, where this is a way larger issue and I could spend hours talking about this, but they don't usually happen that way. Quite often they are in, at least influenced by bad actors. There are people who are either withholding aid or creating conditions. It's a really, I mean, it's a good out, I guess, to be like, to create the material conditions in which a famine can occur and then be like, I didn't do it, because you have plausible deniability there. But again, both things can be true. And I think that we need to start looking more critically. It's difficult because there's so much information shoved in our faces and so little context, and it takes a long time and a lot of lack of social life and human interaction to digest all of this shit. And like, I mean, quite truthfully, like, if I had a functioning social life, I'm like actually joking here mostly, but if I had a functioning social life, like, I'd probably forget a lot of this shit. So like, I don't blame people who are just like out there living their lives, like having a family or whatever, and like just enjoying nature, and who see some propaganda online one way or the other and are like, oh wow, that, because there's so much, and it's so easy to essentialize things and to be super reductionist about very, very, very complicated issues. The reason that I'm interested in history and anthropology together is because, like, there's so much. There's never one aspect. And that's also why I love European history, because it's actually like watching a really intricate, like, dominoes piece where there's like all these different pieces from all these different places, and then they kind of converge in several different areas, and you see this these chain of events occurring, but they're very complicated to explain, right? Like if I were to draw it out, I would end up with like, what's that thing? Fuck, I always forget what it's called. From It's Always Sunny, the guy with the like.
Oh yeah, the meme.
What the hell is his name again? Somebody. God, this happens every time.
Wait, what guy from Always Sunny?
You know what the conspiracy theory?
And he's like,
oh, you're talking about Pepe Sylvia.
Pepe Sylvia. This is like the third time. I swear to God, every time I talk to you, Lexi, somehow this comes up, and you have to remind me who the fuck it is. But that's what he would look like if I were anyway. But yeah, I think that it's extremely difficult. Our tendency is to read things and to jump to conclusions or to essentialize shit. Just believe nothing, become a nihilist. I'm just kidding.
Oh my God, that got dark fast. Sometimes
it's kind of frustrating though, because there is so much information out there. And I remember a friend of mine years ago, I was so naive. I was so naive in my like early 20s. I was like, oh my God, the internet's going to be so fucking great. Like we're going to have so much information and everyone's going to be super informed. And like, we're just gonna be able to find out whatever we want. And, you know, we'll be like all geniuses and we'll know all the things. And a friend of mine was like, no, that's not going to happen. We're absolutely going to have like a oversaturation of information and lose all the context, and people are just going to become desensitized to shit, or they're just going to have the opportunity to basically create whatever narratives they want. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. They were totally right. It's very frustrating. So
that's right. Metal Gear Solid 2 was right. Sorry.
I forgot I was wearing a hat. I just head-desked, but I didn't make it all the way.
Oh no.
Anyway, yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I don't know.
Thank you, Lottie. Thank you. Lexi, would you say communism kills is the main point too, or do you have another one that you run into a lot?
That's probably one of the biggest ones that I think gets brought up with like lefty spheres in general. Like, yeah, we get a lot of references to, well, a lot of people don't, like, you could ask any of the people that make those claims. They couldn't tell you what socialism or communism was. They couldn't have no definition for them. I mean, hell, we make jokes all the time. Socialism is when the government does things, and the more things the government does, the more socialist it is. I don't know, a lot of those kind of memes that are really silly. But I think another one that I think is really interesting is, well, I'll turn it a little away from communism. We'll go to anarchism.
Fuck yeah.
A lot of people talk about anarchism as if it is a actually, I'll put it like this. So of course, a lot of people see anarchism as like, oh, let me go throw like a Molotov cocktail or something really goofy. You know, no rules unless everyone kill each other or whatever. Really unpleasant stuff. But I think it's really interesting that throughout history, democracy was seen through a very similar lens as anarchy is. That through over and over again, throughout, you know, divine right of kings, throughout feudal lords, the conversation, it became, oh, well, you think you can like do things? You think you can like, you know, vote for whatever you want and, you know, ask questions and, you know, no, that's their job. Leave that to them. Leave that to, you know, that's what their job, you know, we're just going to work. I don't know. I don't want to fucking sit around and read. That sounds boring. I know how to till my land. I know how to, you know, make my food, fuck my wife. Look, okay, it'll be okay. All right, look, we'll be okay. I don't want to do all of that stuff. But like, I don't know it's very interesting to me, the relationship that we have towards it, that like we think that like not only the democracy we have now is like an actual functioning democracy,
the best system ever,
but that like the way that we view like I feel you know what, I'll end like this. I feel like a lot of people don't truly recognize what we want when we have a democracy, that like what the goal is, why do we want that? And I think asking yourself that question, sitting with it for a little bit, figuring out what is it that I like there, is important. And maybe we should focus on it a little.
Might be a good idea.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. We didn't get to all the questions I wanted to, but we are actually way over on time.
Oh,
I'm sorry, we're so over. I didn't know that.
It's because we're having too much fun.
I really enjoyed this.
So what I found out is y'all have a fuck ton of information, and I need all of it. I needed to
you
slow
can have it.
down a little. But it looks like I'm just going to have y'all on again. So
Yes, that would be amazing.
yeah, I'm going to be cycling through every Sundays. I have Pip. I will be cycling through different topics, and I hope to have you all on again and talk about things. I also think I could have each of you on individually and learn about this topic in more depth, because I know Lottie has a ton of information on history. Lexi, I don't know what you're doing, but I know you're saying a lot.
I'm everywhere. Don't worry.
Lexi's everywhere.
Got all the bases covered.
Yeah, Lexi's everywhere. And Lance, I feel like we could have some good conversations too. Though I do really appreciate you being my token cishet male here. Thank you. Cishet dude.
That's what I do, y'all. All right.
Just the token.
Get some coconas in chat.
Diversity quota met.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. But seriously, thank you all for showing up and giving me some information. I really appreciate that. Would you each shout yourselves out? Tell me who you are. Who are you?
Do you want to start top left?
I
want to start, yeah. Lottie, let's hear it.
Oh, wait, top left. Okay, my screen is arranged differently. Hi. Hi everyone. I'm Lottie Blix. I really hate to like refer to myself as like a comedy streamer because I'm not funny like intentionally or deliberately. But people seem to laugh
That's the best
at and the only times I try to be funny, people don't, as illustrated earlier, when I attempt to be humorous, people don't get it. But apparently, I don't know. Apparently, people think I'm funny. I talk about I'm an anarchist, mostly non-denominational anarchist. We talk about leftist stuff, mostly actual like practical applications of theory, less of the real deep dives into theory. Talk a lot about history. Especially early modern or medieval to early modern European history, and I'm paleoanthropologist. So we talk about skulls. Get out your calipers, and we will get out your calipers, chat. Actually, I'm probably going to be digging back into some paleo ant stuff pretty soon because the phrenologists have come out of the woodwork once again, and so people need to be educated on how evolution actually works and how phrenology and like the bell curve and shit is complete garbage. So my you can find me on Twitch Monday through Thursday. I'm trying to actually start on time, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard. Twitch.tv/Lottie Blix.
Thank you so much, Lottie. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Lexi, who are you?
I don't know.
That's fair. Shoot. The
best possible answer.
I'm cyberwitchlexi. I usually call myself an anarchist. I like to talk about leftism, gender, fucking all sorts of random ideology memes, systems. We talk about Zizek too much. I don't know. We have fun. We try to explore some ideas together. We try to see the strings that are operating at all times, pulling us in different directions. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I don't know. cyberwitchlexi. You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, all that good jazz. Yeah. Thanks for having us on, Eva.
I really appreciate all of you coming on. Lance, who are you?
Hey everybody, I'm Lance. I go by the he, him pronouns. I'm the token cishet on the panel. I have a little stream. It's kind of a human dumpster fire of political comedy. If you want to check it out, you can go to twitch.tv/The Serfs TV. We're also really well known for our YouTube channel where we kind of rip into right-wing reactionaries like your Steven Crowders, your Jordan Petersons, your Ben Shapinos. So if you want to check that out, you can go to youtube.com/The Serfs TV. And I also really big into the coziness. Love the cozies. So everyone get nice and snug. And thank you so much for having me.
Heck yeah.
This was a time.
Wait, Lance, I know. Sorry to
Yes,
stop here
please.
for a second. Lance, are you still doing Debatey McDebate Face?
I haven't done it since you left, since you became a partner, since you're too good for us now.
Oh yeah, you caught me. Well, yeah, I think I'm still allowed to, but I don't know. I have to recheck.
I can resurrect it. I've started having Ben Shapiro or. Ben Shapiro, yeah, I've Ben Shapiro on. I've started doing a weekly show with Ben Burgess. He's the professor of philosophy from Rutgers, where he debates random Twitchers. So if y'all know anyone who would want to debate Ben Burgess, I'd love to.
I'll
love
take
to have
Ben
you be a part
down.
of that.
I'll debate. I'd probably just agree on things because I'm I don't rhetoric. I don't like. I guess I could if we were to do like a real. I used to do debates like in like junior high and high school, but they were like
it's Oxford style.
script.
It's structured.
Oh, really?
There's actual like 5-minute openers and then 2-minute back and forth.
Oh, I'd actually love to get in. I love that.
Okay.
Because I have ADHD. Like I need that structure. I need structure. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I will just spiral off into oblivion, and it's
right.
Okay, I'm sorry for derailing.
Hijacking Eva's good.
Eva, seriously, thank you for having us on.
Thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. It's been great having you all on. I'm sure I'll be seeing you around soon. So
yes, that would be lovely. I hope we have more conversations.
Mm-hmm. Later, friends.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Oh boy, that was so nice. I'm a little mind blown.